Hey, welcome. We're going to take some minutes here to look at some of the different misconceptions, or I like to call them mythconceptions, of evolution and think about what's the correct version of this information. So let's start out with the commonly stated, it happened so long ago, nobody was there to see it, and it's just a theory after all. So the first thing we need to look at there is the idea of a theory. And this is something that in average everyday life, if you said a theory is something that you're just guessing at, or something that happens a lot but you don't have any evidence to confirm it, you would be correct. In the scientific field, however, there are multiple lines of evidence that say, yes, we can confirm this happens over and over and over again. So dismissing it just on the basis of, oh, it's just a theory, is not really scientifically accurate. The other piece of this, no one saw it happen. We can see it happening on a daily basis. I know I've talked to you guys about the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria because of overuse of antibiotics as a medical treatment. That's evolution in action. All right, so one of the things people have frequently stated or thought is that individuals are capable of adapting throughout their lives. Now, just like I mentioned, popularly, if I said, oh, I'm adapting to the changing temperatures, I can be accurate when I'm talking about just moving around the rest of the world, but if I'm talking about a scientific organism or a scientific process, I'm not correct. For instance, during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, there were a lot more white-colored moths that were able to blend in with the tree trunks of the trees around the area where the factories were developing. Birds weren't able to see them because there were a lot of lichens on the tree trunks, and they blended in with the lichens. As the tree trunks started having soot deposits on them from all of the fossil fuel burning that was going on back in the early 1900s in these factory areas, the white moths were no longer able to blend in with the trees and got more easily picked off by the birds that were trying to feed on them. The black or darker colored moths were more able to blend in with the tree trunk color being dark. Now, the white-colored moths would have been great if they could have just said, that's fine, I'm just going to get a little dye job and change to a darker color and blend in with my background. They weren't able to do that. They got picked off. Their genes were not represented in the gene pool anymore, and so the next generation of moths was all based on darker-colored parents and became darker-colored moths. So the truth of this statement is that a population can change, but the individuals themselves, the DNA that they're born with, is the DNA that they have. So populations change in what combination of alleles are represented based on pressures in the environment, but the individual itself, you get what you get. One of the other myths that we can deal with is that species improve over time. This also is not correct. For instance, dinosaurs were not a failed experiment or an ineffective species. They didn't go extinct because they weren't making it in the environment that they had. They had evolved over a long period of time to be adequately adapted to their environment. But when that habitat changed, many of them were not able to survive in the changing conditions they were exposed to. And those conditions changed really quickly. Some of them were able to survive, and they moved on to become snakes or crocodiles or alligators, or those that were in the beginning stages of development as birds moved on in that evolutionary pathway. But they didn't necessarily get better, they just changed to adapt to the current conditions. Temperature change, food sources availability, soil. All right, so the truth in the situation is that as the environment changes, if a species has lots of different alleles present for a trait that is critical for their success or their continued survival, then as the environment changes, some of those alleles will prove to be more beneficial to that environment, and those alleles will increase in frequency, ultimately over a long period of time, resulting in change in the characteristics of the species overall, or the species' inability to survive, and they wipe out, they die. All right, so another condition or another myth that we can see present in this understanding of evolution is that organisms have a specific trait so that they can survive. For instance, fish gills allow fish to breathe underwater. the reverse is actually the case. If they didn't have those gills, they wouldn't be able to breathe underwater. They would have died out, or they would be a land animal. So humans can't just decide that it would be awesome, instead of having to wear scuba gear, for us to breathe underwater and develop that trait, and then say, hey, we can survive underwater because we can breathe water, oxygen from water. Instead, a trait allows an organism to take advantage of something in the environment. So if there are not as many organisms that are able to survive underwater by breathing oxygen from the water through gills, then that's a niche, or that's an area that an organism can expand into and take advantage of. So having a trait allows something to live somewhere, not this trait is so that they can do that. There is no design behind the traits. If you don't have the trait, you don't live there. This is a phrase that gets misapplied frequently, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is often interpreted as survival of the fastest, or the strongest, or the best in some way. And all it means is that it has some version of an adaptation, some allele that allows it to be well suited to that environment. And it may not even be the best suited. It may be well enough suited so that it's able to survive, and again, providing lots of different alleles into the population so that that maybe that organism is able to survive in a variety of habitats instead of just one specific habitat. So an organism, for instance, that can survive in water and land has a lot more opportunity to spread out and be present in more habitats. Amphibians are an excellent example of that. Some amphibians are capable of actually breathing through their skin. They have highly vascularized, or lots of veins and vessels in their skin, so they go underwater and they're able to actually take in oxygen through their skin. But they also have lungs, so they're able to survive on land. There are some fish that are able to breathe atmospheric oxygen through their swim bladders, but are more effective in the water. So, again, not necessarily the fittest is the strongest, or the best, or the fastest, or the biggest. It's the ones that are able to actually survive in that environment, or potentially flexibly in lots of environments. So there's frequently an interpretation or an assumption that humans are exempt from this idea of evolution. And we can see over time, if we track the hominid families, we can see that there's been change based on our ability to survive. We see change in our individual, in the species characteristics, and we also see high success rates in some branches of hominids. In fact, there's only one line of hominids that has survived to modern day, and that would be Homo sapiens. As fossil evidence is still emerging, the story of the family Hominidae is still emerging. And if you're interested, there's a lot out there that you can be investigating to determine what that all means. So the truth that we have to address, or that we have to recognize, is that humans have been very successful in surviving in lots of different environments and lots of different habitats. And there's events that happened, or environments that early humans inhabited, that encouraged a lot of different alleles and encouraged a lot of traits that have led to our ongoing success throughout evolutionary history. One phrase that you might hear a lot is that humans came from monkeys, or humans didn't come from monkeys, as an argument against evolution. And the truth is that no species on this planet that currently exists came from another species that currently exists. All have a common ancestor, just like humans and other primates have a common ancestor. All the organisms that currently live on the planet came from an ancestor where there was a branching off. You can see that we have a common ancestor way back here, and these branches that developed into different kinds of primates. You'll see the same thing happening with birds and reptiles and amphibians and bacteria if you're willing to sort out the bacteria from a technical perspective. We can make these connections or recognize these connections from the various ways that we've already looked at evidence for evolution. We can do comparative anatomy, we can do genetic sampling, we can look at the fossil record to start developing our understanding of these relationships that have gone on in the past. And then finally, many people think that humans are the pinnacle, the whole purpose of evolution, or the final crowning point. And I think it's important for us to recognize humans have been wildly successful, but we are not even the largest number of species present on the planet. That honor goes to a variety of insects, and I think that that number is that one species that is the most represented on the planet is a constantly changing number. So I don't want to throw any particular organism out there, but I will confirm for you that it is something in the insect species. Nope, sorry, might be bacteria. It's a constantly shifting title, so I don't want to throw one specific one out there. But our intelligence, which developed in these really complex environments that our ancestors lived in, is one of the things that has allowed us to be so successful and move into a variety of environments across the planet. It's not our strength, it's not our speed, it's not our thick furry coats that let us be in the Arctic, or our lack of thick furry coats that lets us survive ideally in the tropics. It's our intelligence and our ability to change the environment around us that has allowed us to be so successful and to control the environments around us. We are dominant, but we don't know where evolution is leading, what changes might be out there in the future for us that will make us, or perhaps other species, be better suited to the environment as things change. All right, that's it. That's what I have to say for now. Thanks for listening, and have a great rest of the day.